I was sitting at my kitchen table, finishing up some work emails on my laptop when my wife walked in with that look. You know the one. The look that says she's been thinking, planning, and now it's time for me to hear about it. She had a folded piece of paper in her hand, and she set it down in front of me with the kind of ceremony you'd reserve for signing a peace treaty. "We need to talk," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about our marriage, and I've put together something that I think will help us." I looked at the paper, then back at her. "Okay, what is it?" "It's a list," she said, her tone suddenly taking on that teacher-like quality she got when she thought she was being helpful. "Things you need to improve to save our marriage. I've been really thoughtful about this, and I think if you work on these areas, we can get back to where we used to be." I unfolded the paper and started reading. The title at the top said, "Improvement Areas for Our Marriage," in her neat handwriting. Below that was a numbered list that kept going and going and going. Number 1. Take more initiative with household chores without being asked. Number 2. Be more emotionally available during conversations. Number 3. Stop leaving dishes in the sink overnight. Number 4. Show more appreciation for the things I do around the house. The list continued down the page. Number 7 was about my tendency to withdraw during conflicts. Number 11 criticized my lack of romantic gestures. Number 15 suggested I needed to work on my communication style. By the time I got to number 23, which was about how I needed to be more supportive of my goals and dreams, I realized I was looking at more than just suggestions. This wasn't a list of improvements. This was an indictment, a comprehensive breakdown of everything she thought was wrong with me, packaged as helpful advice for saving our marriage. I set the paper down and looked at her. She was watching me expectantly, like she was waiting for me to thank her for this thoughtful gift of criticism. "So," she said, leaning forward slightly, "what do you think? I know it might seem like a lot, but I really think these changes could make a huge difference for us." I picked up the paper again and counted. 28 items. 28 things that were apparently wrong with me and needed fixing. Not one item on this list asked what she might need to work on. Not one suggestion that maybe, just maybe, marriage was a two-way street. "This is eye-opening," I said, and I meant it. Just not in the way she thought I did. Her face lit up. "I'm so glad you see it that way. I was worried you might get defensive, but this is exactly the kind of open-mindedness we need." I folded the paper back up and stood from the table. "You're absolutely right. This is exactly what we needed. So you'll work on these things?" she asked, hope creeping into her voice. "Oh, I'm definitely going to work on something," I said. "I need to think about this for a bit, but you've given me a lot to consider." She smiled, looking satisfied with herself. "Take your time. I know it's a lot to process, but I really think this could be the turning point for us." I walked upstairs to my home office and closed the door. Then I sat down at my desk and really looked at that list again. Item number 12 was about my need to be right all the time. Number 16 complained about my inflexibility. Number 21 said I needed to prioritize our relationship over work. Every single item was about what I needed to change, what I needed to fix, what I needed to improve. There was no acknowledgement that she might have contributed to any of our problems. No recognition that maybe some of these issues had two sides. No suggestion that perhaps a marriage requires both people to make adjustments. This wasn't a conversation starter. It was a list of demands dressed up as helpful suggestions. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized what this really was. This was her way of telling me that everything wrong with our marriage was my fault, and if I just became the person she wanted me to be, everything would be fine. The audacity of it was almost impressive. She'd essentially handed me a personality makeover checklist and expected me to be grateful for the guidance. I opened my laptop and started typing. If she wanted to communicate through lists, then I could work with that. I was pretty good at making lists myself. 20 minutes later, I had my response ready. I printed it out, folded it just like she had done with hers, and headed back downstairs. She was in the living room now, watching some reality show on Netflix, looking pleased with herself. When she saw me coming down the stairs with my own piece of paper, her eyebrows went up. "Did you want to talk about the list?" she asked, muting the TV. "Actually," I said, "I wrote my own list. I thought it might be helpful for you to see my perspective too." I handed her the folded paper and sat down in the chair across from the couch. She opened it eagerly, probably expecting to see my thoughts on her suggestions or maybe my own areas where I thought she could improve. Instead, She found a single line item under the heading My Improvement Plan. 1. File for divorce. She stared at the paper for a long moment, then looked up at me. Is this some kind of joke? Not at all, I said calmly. You said you wanted me to work on improving our marriage. This is my plan for improvement. This isn't improving our marriage, she said, her voice rising slightly. This is ending it. Exactly, I said. And that's the improvement I think we need. The color drained from her face as she read my list again, like she was hoping the words would somehow change. They didn't. You can't be serious, she said, setting the paper down on the coffee table like it might bite her. We're talking about improving our marriage, not throwing it away. I leaned back in my chair, completely calm. My improvement plan is simple. Sometimes the best way to fix something broken is to stop pretending it's working. She stood up quickly, pacing to the window and back. This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. All I did was give you some constructive feedback. Constructive feedback? I couldn't help but smile at that. 28 items telling me everything that's wrong with me isn't constructive feedback. It's a character assassination with bullet points. That's not what it was, she said, her voice getting defensive. I was trying to help us. I was being honest about what needs to change. You're right, you were being honest. Just not in the way you think. I picked up her list from the coffee table. Let me read you some of this honesty. Number 14. Stop being so logical about everything and show more emotion. Number 19. Learn to compromise instead of always thinking you're right. My personal favorite is number 25. Work on being less stubborn. She crossed her arms. Those are legitimate concerns. Maybe they are. But here's what's interesting about your list. Every single item is about what I need to change. Every problem in our marriage, according to this document, stems from my failures as a husband. You didn't mention one thing you might need to work on. Not one. That's because this list was about helping you see. It was about helping me see that you think I'm the problem. All of it. Every issue we've ever had. Every argument we've had. Every moment of unhappiness in this marriage is apparently my fault. I stood up and walked to the mantelpiece, then turned back to face her. Do you really believe that? She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since this conversation started, she didn't have an immediate response. Here's what your list actually told me. I continued. It told me that you've been keeping score for years, writing down every little thing I do that annoys you, every way I fall short of whatever ideal husband you have in your head. It told me that instead of talking to me about problems when they come up, you've been building a case against me. I wasn't building a case, she protested. I was trying to be thorough. Same thing, different packaging. I walked back to my chair, but didn't sit down. You want to know what would have been constructive feedback? Coming to me 6 months ago and saying, hey, I've been feeling like you're not hearing me when we talk. Can we work on that together? That's constructive. What you gave me was a performance review where I failed every category. She was quiet for a moment, and I could see her trying to figure out how to respond. Finally, she said, so you're going to end our marriage because I pointed out some problems? I'm going to end our marriage because you don't see it as our marriage. You see it as my marriage that you're stuck in, waiting for me to become good enough for you to be happy. That's not true, isn't it? When's the last time you asked yourself what you might be doing to contribute to our problems? When's the last time you considered that maybe some of our issues aren't just about my shortcomings? She sat back down on the couch, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. I do think about that. Really? Because there's no evidence of it on this list. According to this, I held up her paper. You're perfect, and I'm a disaster. If that's really how you see our marriage, then we definitely need to end it. But not for the reasons you think. You're twisting everything I said. Am I? Let's try an experiment. Name one thing you could work on to improve our marriage. Just one. She stared at me for a long moment. I communicate my needs clearly. Maybe too clearly. That's not naming something you could work on. That's defending something you already do and then suggesting you might be too good at it. I shook my head. You literally can't do it. You can't name one thing you might need to change or improve. Everything is my fault. The room got quiet except for the sound of the TV, which was still muted. She was looking down at her hands, and I could see her mind working. This isn't how this was supposed to go, she said finally. How was it supposed to go? You were supposed to, I don't know, talk about the list. Maybe disagree with some things, but then work with me on the others. We were supposed to make a plan. A plan where I change everything about myself and you change nothing? That's not what I meant. But that's what you wrote. I sat back down, keeping my voice level. You spent time writing 28 things you want me to fix. You didn't write anything about what we could work on together. You didn't suggest any problems that might be shared responsibility. You made a list of my failures and called it marriage counseling. She picked up my list again and stared at it. So this is it. You're really going to file for divorce. Unless you can give me a reason not to. I love you. That's not a reason. That's a feeling. And if you love someone, you don't hand them a list of everything that's wrong with them and call it help. She was quiet again, and I could see her really thinking for the first time in this entire conversation. I didn't realize how it would sound, she said quietly. How did you think it would sound? Helpful. Like I was being supportive and trying to make things better. I looked at her carefully. Do you really not see how handing someone a list of their personal failures might not feel supportive? For the first time, she looked genuinely confused rather than defensive. I thought if I was specific about what needed to change, it would be easier to fix. And what about what you needed to change? I don't know, she said, and her voice was smaller now. I guess I thought I was doing my part by identifying the problems. Over the next few days, she tried everything. The morning after our conversation, I woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs. She was in the kitchen wearing that apron I got her for Christmas 2 years ago, the one she'd never used, making breakfast like some 1950s housewife. Good morning, she said with forced cheerfulness. I thought I'd make us a nice breakfast before work. I poured myself coffee and sat down at the table. Thanks. She set a plate in front of me and sat down with her own. So, I was thinking about our conversation yesterday. Yeah, maybe we could talk about the divorce thing. I mean, surely that was just you being upset about the list. Right. I took a bite of eggs and looked at her. Actually, I called an attorney yesterday afternoon. I have an appointment next week. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. You actually called a lawyer? I told you my improvement plan was simple. I meant it. The forced smile disappeared. You can't just make major life decisions when you're angry. I'm not angry. I'm clear. I finished my coffee and stood up. This breakfast is really good, by the way. But making me breakfast doesn't change the fundamental problem we talked about. She followed me to the front door as I grabbed my keys. What fundamental problem? I said I didn't realize how the list sounded. I can work on that. Can you? Because yesterday you couldn't name a single thing you might need to change about yourself. Making breakfast isn't the same as recognizing that maybe you've been approaching our marriage wrong. I am recognizing it, she said quickly. That's why I'm trying to show you that I care. By doing things you think I want instead of actually listening to what I said. I left for work, and when I came home that evening, she was waiting with a different strategy. She'd cleaned the house from top to bottom and had dinner ready when I walked in the door. I spent the day thinking, she announced. About what you said. About the list. I sat down at the dining room table, which she'd set with our good dishes. Okay, you're right that I didn't think about what I might need to work on. So I made my own list. She pulled out a piece of paper. Things I could improve. I looked at the paper. It had 3 items on it. Number 1, be more appreciative of the things you do. Number 2, don't give feedback in list format. Number 3, ask about your day more often. I set the paper down. This is a list of ways you can be nicer to me. That's not the same thing. What do you mean? I mean you're still not seeing the actual problem. You think the issue is that you weren't nice enough when you gave me criticism. You don't see that the criticism itself was the problem. Her face fell. I don't understand what you want me to say. I want you to understand that marriage isn't about one person fixing the other person. It's about 2 people working together to solve problems together. But there are problems, she said. Things that need to be addressed. Of course there are problems. Every marriage has problems. But when you write a list of 28 things that are wrong with me and 0 things that might be wrong with your approach to our marriage, you're not trying to solve problems. You're trying to manage me like I'm an employee who needs performance improvement. She was quiet during dinner, and I could see her thinking. After we finished eating, she tried a different approach. Okay, she said. Let's say you're right about the list. Let's say I was wrong to approach it that way. Can't we work past that? Can't we start over? Start over how? I don't know. Go to counseling. Talk to someone who can help us communicate better. I leaned back in my chair. You want to go to counseling so someone else can tell you how to communicate with me better? That's not what I meant, isn't it? You're still looking for someone to teach you the right technique to get me to be the husband you want me to be. You're not looking at whether the husband you want me to be is reasonable or whether you might need to change your expectations. The next day was Saturday, and she tried the emotional approach. I was in the garage working on organizing some tools when she came out with tears in her eyes. I can't believe you're going to throw away 15 years of marriage because of one stupid list, she said. I put down the wrench I was holding. I'm not throwing away 15 years. I'm recognizing that maybe those 15 years haven't been as good as we pretended they were. They were good. We were happy. Were we? Or were you happy when I was doing what you wanted and frustrated when I wasn't? She wiped her eyes. That's not fair. It's not about fair. It's about honest. I turned to face her fully. When's the last time we had a fight where you considered that maybe you were wrong? When's the last time you apologized for something without adding a but to explain why your behavior was justified? I apologize all the time. You say sorry. That's different from apologizing. Saying sorry is about making the conflict go away. Apologizing is about recognizing you did something wrong. Fine, she said, her voice getting sharper. I'm wrong. I'm terrible. I'm the worst wife in the world. Is that what you want to hear? That's exactly what I don't want to hear. Because that's not an apology either. That's sarcasm designed to make me feel bad for bringing up the problem. She stared at me for a moment, then turned and walked back into the house. That night, she tried the bargaining approach. What if I throw away the list? She said as we were getting ready for bed. What if we just forget the whole thing happened? Then nothing changes. We go back to the way things were, and in 6 months or a year, you'll be frustrated about the same things again. Except next time, instead of a list, it'll be something else. What if I promise not to be critical anymore? That's not sustainable, and it's not honest. If something bothers you, you should be able to talk about it. The problem isn't that you have concerns. The problem is how you approach those concerns and whether you're willing to examine your own behavior too. I don't know how to do that, she admitted quietly. It was the first honest thing she'd said all week. I know you don't, I said. And that's exactly the problem. By Sunday night, she was getting desperate. I could see it in the way she kept looking at me, like she was trying to figure out what combination of words or actions would make me change my mind. The appointment with the lawyer is tomorrow. I reminded her as we were watching TV. I know. Are you going to try to talk me out of it? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, would it work? No. Then what's the point? I looked at her carefully. The point would be whether you actually understand why I'm doing this, or whether you're just trying to avoid the consequences. I understand, she said quickly. Do you? Because every conversation we've had this week has been about how to get me to stay. None of them have been about whether staying would actually be good for either of us. She didn't answer that. I went to the lawyer on Monday morning. His office was in one of those professional buildings downtown, the kind with marble floors and elevator music. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, wearing a navy suit and the kind of confident expression that probably cost his clients $200 an hour. So, he said after I'd explained the situation, you're looking at an uncontested divorce? I hope so. We don't have kids, and we both work. Should be straightforward. He made some notes on a legal pad. Property, assets, houses in both names. We both contributed to the down payment. 2 cars, both financed. Savings account, checking account, retirement accounts. Nothing complicated. How long have you been married? 15 years. He looked up from his notes. And your wife knows you're here. She knows I'm filing. Whether she's accepted it is another question. Understood. I'll prepare the paperwork. You should have everything ready to file by the end of the week. When I got home that evening, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and papers spread around her. How was your day? She asked, not looking up. Fine. What are you working on? Research. She turned the laptop toward me. The screen showed a marriage counseling website. I found 3 therapists in our area who specialize in relationship crisis intervention. I've already called 2 of them. I sat down across from her. I told you I'm filing for divorce. I know what you told me, but I also know you're not unreasonable. If I can show you that I'm serious about working on things, maybe we can find a way through this. Working on what things? She shuffled through the papers. I printed out some articles about communication in marriage, and I found this workbook about identifying destructive patterns in relationships. I looked at the stack of papers. You're approaching this like a research project. What's wrong with that? You said I need to examine my own behavior. So I'm examining it. By reading about it online? By learning how to do better. Isn't that what you want? I leaned back in my chair. What I want is for you to actually understand the problem, not just research solutions to a problem you still don't fully grasp. Then explain it to me again. I've explained it. multiple times. The problem isn't that you don't have the right communication techniques. The problem is that you fundamentally don't see our marriage as a partnership between equals. She closed the laptop. That's not true. Then why are all your solutions about learning how to handle me better? Why aren't any of them about questioning whether your expectations are reasonable? My expectations are reasonable. I expect my husband to help around the house and be emotionally present. Those aren't unreasonable things. And I expect my wife to treat me like an adult instead of a project that needs constant improvement. Is that unreasonable? She didn't answer immediately, which was progress of a sort. The next morning, her sister called while I was getting ready for work. I could hear her side of the conversation from the bedroom. I don't understand why he's being so dramatic. No, I gave him some feedback about our marriage, and he's acting like I attacked him. I know, right? Men are so sensitive. I came downstairs, and she quickly ended the call. That was your sister? I asked. She was just checking in. Did you tell her about the list? I mentioned that we were having some communication issues. Did you tell her what was actually on the list? She hesitated. I told her the general idea, but not the specifics. She doesn't need to know every detail of our private business. Or you don't want her to know that you wrote 28 criticisms of your husband and called it helpful feedback. That afternoon, I got a text from her brother. Hey man, heard you and my sister are going through a rough patch. Want to grab a beer and talk? When I got home, I asked her about it. I didn't call him, she said defensively. He called me. Word gets around. What exactly is getting around? That we're having problems. That you're considering divorce. And what's your version of why we're having problems? She shifted uncomfortably. I told him we had a disagreement about communication styles. Communication styles? Yes. Did you mention that you wrote a list of everything that's wrong with me? That's not what the list was. That's exactly what the list was. And the fact that you can't even accurately describe it to your own family tells me you know it was wrong. That weekend, we were supposed to go to her friend's birthday party. When Saturday came, she got dressed and ready, then looked at me expectantly. Aren't you getting ready? I'm not going. Why not? Because I don't feel like spending the evening pretending everything is fine while you tell people we're having communication issues. So I'm supposed to go alone? You're supposed to do whatever you want. But I'm not going to be part of the performance. She went alone, and when she came back 3 hours later, she was upset. Everyone kept asking where you were, she said. It was embarrassing. What did you tell them? That you weren't feeling well. So you lied. I didn't want to get into our personal business. No, you didn't want to explain why your husband is filing for divorce. There's a difference. The following week, the divorce papers were ready. I brought them home and set them on the kitchen counter. The lawyer says you have 30 days to respond, I told her. She stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. You're really doing this. I told you I was really doing this. But I thought if I showed you I was trying to work on things. You showed me you were trying to avoid the consequences of the real problem. That's not the same as working on it. She picked up the papers and flipped through them. This makes it all so final. That's the point. What if I contested it? Then we'd spend a lot of money on lawyers and end up in the same place, just angrier and poorer. What if I refused to sign? Then the divorce would take longer, but it would still happen. You can't force someone to stay married to you. She set the papers back down. I don't understand how we got here. We got here because you've spent 15 years trying to turn me into someone else, and I finally realized I don't want to be turned into someone else. I never tried to turn you into someone else. I picked up the original list from where it was still sitting on the counter. 28 things you want me to change. If I changed all of these things, would I still be the same person you married? She looked at the list, then at me. For the first time, I saw something in her expression that looked like genuine uncertainty. I don't know, she said quietly. That's the first honest answer you've given me in weeks. 2 weeks passed after I served the papers. She stopped trying to negotiate or bargain. Instead, she got quiet. Really quiet. I'd find her sitting at the kitchen table in the mornings, just staring out the window with a cup of coffee getting cold in her hands. You okay? I asked one morning. She looked up like she'd forgotten I was there. I've been thinking. About what? About what you said. About the 28 things. She turned to face me fully. I keep going through them in my head, and I realize I can't remember when most of these things started bothering me. Like, when did I decide you were too logical? When did I decide you weren't romantic enough? I poured myself coffee and sat down. What do you think? I think maybe I've been collecting complaints for years without really thinking about whether they were fair complaints. It was the most self-aware thing she'd said since this whole situation started. Take number 15, she continued. Your communication style. What exactly is wrong with your communication style? You tell me. It was on your list. That's just it. I wrote it down because it sounded like something that could be a problem, but when I really think about it, you're actually pretty clear when you talk. You say what you mean. You don't play games or hint around. Maybe that's not a flaw. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I think I've been comparing you to some ideal husband in my head. Someone who doesn't exist. Where did this ideal husband come from? I don't know. Books, movies, other people's marriages that look perfect from the outside. My friend at work is always talking about how her husband surprises her with flowers and writes her little notes. So I decided you should do that too. Did you ever ask me to do those things? No, I just expected you to figure it out. And when you didn't, I got frustrated and put it on the list. I studied her face. She looked tired, like she'd been working through something difficult. What else have you been thinking about? About what you said about partnership. About equals. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. I don't think I've been treating you like an equal. I think I've been treating you like someone who was supposed to make me happy, and when you didn't make me happy the way I expected, I blamed you for it. This was new territory. In 15 years of marriage, I'd never heard her question her own expectations before. Why do you think you did that? Honestly, I think I believed that marriage was supposed to work a certain way, and if it wasn't working that way, it was because you weren't doing your part right. It never occurred to me that maybe my idea of how marriage was supposed to work was the problem. She got up and walked to the window, looking out at the backyard. I called my mom yesterday. Yeah, I told her about the divorce. About the list. I read her some of the things I wrote. What did she say? She was quiet for a really long time. Then she said, Honey, that sounds like you were trying to redesign your husband. When I tried to explain that I was just trying to improve our marriage, she said, Marriage isn't about improving people. It's about accepting people and building a life together. She turned back to me. My mom has been married to my dad for 42 years. If anyone knows about marriage, it's her. And she basically told me I've been doing it wrong. What else did she say? She asked me if I would want Dad to make a list of 28 things wrong with her. I said that was different, that I was trying to help. She said, Help with what? Help him become someone else. That's when I realized that's exactly what I was trying to do. Over the next few days, she kept having these moments of clarity. She'd be doing something ordinary, like folding laundry or making dinner, and then suddenly stop and look at me with this expression of dawning realization. I just remembered something. She said one evening while we were watching TV. Last year, when you wanted to go on that fishing trip with your brother, I made such a big deal about it. I said you were being selfish for wanting to spend a weekend away from me. I remember. But I go out with my friends all the time. I have book club, girls' nights, shopping trips. I never asked if those things bothered you. I just assumed they were fine because they were things I wanted to do. They were fine. I want you to have friends and interests. But I didn't extend the same consideration to you. I acted like your wanting time with your brother was a personal rejection of me. She muted the TV and turned to face me. That's not fair, is it? No, it's not. And number 7 on the list. About you withdrawing during conflicts. I wrote that you need to stop withdrawing, but I never thought about why you withdraw. Maybe you withdraw because I don't actually want to resolve conflicts. Maybe I just want to be right. She was starting to see patterns that had been invisible to her before. It was like watching someone put on glasses for the first time and realizing the world had been blurry all along. I've been keeping score, she said a few days later. Not just with the list, but for years. Every time you did something that didn't match what I thought you should do, I filed it away as evidence that you weren't trying hard enough. Evidence for what? For the case I was building that you were the problem in our marriage. I realize now that I was always building that case. Every argument we had, every time I got frustrated, it was always about what you were doing wrong. Never about what I might be doing wrong. One morning, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook, writing. What's that? I asked. I'm trying to write down the things I've done wrong in our marriage. Not ways I could be nicer to you, but actual things I've done that were unfair or hurtful. She showed me the notebook. She'd filled 3 pages already. I criticized your family, but got defensive when you had any opinion about mine. I made major decisions about our social calendar without asking if you wanted to do those things. I assumed you should know what I wanted without me having to tell you, then got mad when you didn't read my mind. I interrupted you constantly, but complained that you didn't listen to me. The list went on. It was a real accounting of real problems, not surface-level politeness issues. This is hard to look at, she said. I don't like seeing myself this way. That's what accountability feels like. Is this how you felt when you read my list about you? Worse, because your list was mostly about personality traits and preferences. This list is about behavior choices you made repeatedly over years. She set down her pen. I owe you an apology. A real one. Okay. I'm sorry that I spent 15 years treating you like a project instead of a partner. I'm sorry that I made our marriage about fixing you instead of building something together. I'm sorry that I never questioned whether my expectations were fair or whether my behavior was contributing to our problems. She took a breath. And I'm sorry that it took you filing for divorce for me to see any of this. You shouldn't have had to go to that extreme to get me to look at myself honestly. It was the first real apology I'd heard from her in years. Maybe ever. I appreciate that, I said. Does it change anything? I looked at her carefully. She wasn't asking hopefully or desperately. She was asking like someone who genuinely wanted to know the answer, whatever it was. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But it's the first conversation we've had in weeks that feels like we're talking to each other instead of past each other. 3 months later, we were sitting in a coffee shop downtown. Not for any special reason, just because she'd asked if I wanted to get coffee and talk. The divorce papers were still sitting and signed on my desk at home. How do you feel about counseling? She asked, stirring sugar into her latte. Depends on why we're going. Not to fix you. Not to teach me techniques to manage you better. But to learn how to actually be married to each other instead of to the people we thought we should be. I considered this. That sounds different. It is different. I found someone who specializes in helping couples rebuild after major relationship breakdowns. She doesn't do the let's improve communication thing. She does the let's figure out if you actually want to be married to each other thing. And you want to figure that out? I want to figure out if the person I'm becoming can be married to the person you are, instead of trying to turn you into someone I think I want to be married to. We've been having conversations like this for weeks. Real conversations where she asked questions instead of making demands, where she listened to answers instead of preparing rebuttals. I threw away the original list, she said, but I wrote a new one. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, and for a moment, I felt that familiar tension. Then she handed it to me. It had one item. Learn to be married to my actual husband instead of my imaginary one. That's it. That's everything. Every other problem we have comes from that one. If I can learn to do that, we might have something worth saving. If I can't, then you were right to file for divorce. I folded the paper back up. And if we do this counseling thing and figure out we can make it work, what happens to the divorce papers? We tear them up. But not until we're both sure we want to be married to who we actually are, not who we think we should be. And if we figure out we can't make it work, then we sign them and end this as friends who tried everything and gave each other an honest chance. 6 months later, we were in our kitchen making dinner together. Really together, not with one person cooking while the other sat at the table scrolling through their phone. How was your day? She asked, chopping vegetables. Good. Busy. Johnson finally approved the Henderson project. She smiled. The one you've been working on for 3 months? That's the one. I'm proud of you. It was a small moment, but it represented something bigger. She was proud of me for succeeding at work, not frustrated that work sometimes kept me late. She was interested in my day because she cared about my life, not because she was monitoring my mood. How was book club? I asked. Interesting. We're reading this book about marriage, and there's a whole chapter about expectations versus reality. Made me think about us. Good thoughts or concerning thoughts? Grateful thoughts. We could have just gotten divorced and both spent the rest of our lives thinking the other person was the problem. Instead, we figured out how to actually like being married to each other. The divorce papers were in a shredder bag somewhere, torn up on the day we'd both decided we wanted to try being married for real this time. It wasn't perfect. We still had disagreements, still got on each other's nerves sometimes. But now when we had problems, we approached them as problems to solve together, not as evidence that one of us was fundamentally flawed. You know what I realized? She said, seasoning the chicken. What? I spent 15 years trying to change you into someone I thought I wanted to be married to. Turns out, I actually like being married to you. Just took a near divorce to figure it out. Best worst thing that ever happened to us. She wasn't wrong. Sometimes you have to be willing to lose something completely before you can figure out if it's actually worth keeping.
Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.